Hi there. Here today with Tosh. I'm going to put the camera back to normal in a second. I just wanted to make sure that I got an animal on at the beginning because I always do that. And today it's Tosh. Want to say hello? There he is. All right. Okay, you can come back on later if you want. There. All right. Back again to hack away at my notepads. So the other live stream, my last one, this is the, remember I was talking about a hematite device? What the hell happened to my hair? Wait a minute. It starts. This is the hematite grounding pendant, and I got it from David Sarita's website. It was about $350, and it's actually an energetic device. Do you see the way it's wrapped? It's got all sorts of spirals, and it does something. The way it's wrapped is an energy amplification, and I should look it up again. It also, he has invented a process. He works for NASA, David Sarita, and they've got some kind of a process by which it's different from programming, but there's some kind of a machine or something, and they take the sound of the sound of the sun, and they've got a whole bunch of different programs that they can somehow, it's different from a program, but they make the stone, whatever stone it is, whatever stone they use. This one's hematite, but it comes in a wide variety. And they can make it permanently emit whatever the sonic program is. Like they've got the sound of the sun, they've got Ohm, they've got a variety of different planets where they take the energetic signature and then they wind up putting it into the stone, so it permanently emits that, and then they wrap it for amplification. And this is, so spirals amplify. So this one's got spirals and spirals and spirals on top of spirals, and I really like it. So this one is particularly grounding, and so since I'm one who pops out of body constantly if I'm not careful, I found this one really super useful, particularly like when my Joan memories first started coming back, when all of that energy came back. I was out of body far more often than I was barely in it at all, actually. And this thing was incredibly useful. So I thought I would mention that. Ooh, it's hot. So let's see. I've got all of this. I'm just going to hack away at it for a little while. There's a big divide going on now. Hang on a minute. Whoop. You knocked over our chair. Remember I said it's like oil and water? The third dimensional, the people who are not yet awakened, a lot of them don't even recognize necessarily that anything is going on yet. Some of them are not coming, but some of them are going to be in for kind of a rude awakening. And some of them are going to actually wind up waking up. And I hope a lot of them do. I was going to Sorry, I should have been more organized. I thought I was. Let me get to my notepad that I wanted. Is it this one? Oh, I guess I'll get this diagram out of the way. So I realized I had started to talk about something a while ago, and then I never really got back to it. So I was talking about ancestral coding, biological lineage, where I was talking about C-sections and when babies are born, the place where they pick up their biological ancestral coding from their biological lineage is in the vaginal canal, the birth canal. When the baby comes through, I should probably have made a different diagram, but let's say the black dot's the baby, and it comes down here, and right through the birth canal would be where the biological, the lineage, the genetic biological lineage, those codes are transmitted there. So that's why a lot of babies who are choosing to come through C-section, they're making that choice specifically to avoid picking up any of the ancestral baggage. But they already have their spiritual lineage. Like your spiritual DNA and your biological DNA are different. Your spiritual DNA is like all of your past life, history, like your energetic, there's like an energetic membrane. Like if you imagine that there's like strata that's invisible, and when you die, you leave your body, you pop out of your body and you leave your biological DNA, but you carry all of your energetic resonance. You kind of pop back out of it when you die. And then you wind up with kind of transparent strata. You can kind of leave that. When you go back into body, when you reincarnate, you go into a body, but it's kind of like going back down through like layers of, I want to say something like thick cellophane. You pick up you kind of go back into your same energetic form. And then the last thing you pick up is your biological form. Like you go into the body of the baby, the fetus, or the depending on when you go back in. It's not just one time. Some people go in earlier in the pregnancy, and some people leave it till relatively late in the pregnancy before they kind of go into the actual vessel, the body. But the point is that you pick up, you go down, and you go down through your energetic body. You basically pick up your energetic body every time. So that's why you come in with like your past life memory. It's like you go down through the veil, like the veil of forgetfulness, whatever. You go down through that, and you go into the same, more or less, with some adjustments, but more or less you get the same energetic body that you had before, but you get a new physical body. So that's why we tend, and every force evolves a form. So the energetic forces are going to produce a kind of a form. They're already going to influence your physical appearance, not only your biological DNA. Your biological DNA influences you. It all has like a ratio, but there's more energetic influence than there is biological influence, because you've got two strands of biological DNA, and depending on what you're here to do, you can have, some people have relatively little of their DNA on. What we're trying to do is get everybody up to 12 strands of active DNA, 2 of them being biological, which just influence your body, and the rest of them being energetic. And we're trying to get all of the crap cleared out of everybody's energetic DNA. So that would give you 10 strands of lit energetic DNA And when everybody's DNA is back online, all of their clairsenses, their energy senses come back. So you would pick up, so that means everyone's telepathy would be back online, everyone's clairsenses would be back online, you know, your clairaudience, your clairvoyance, etc. So when your DNA is dormant, when your energetic DNA is dormant, that's what we say is you're asleep. And when we say that you only have 2 biological strands of DNA, that's basically like the sleepers who are kind of reduced to mere, the consciousness that's just kind of merely to dense physical ones. And there is no such thing as junk DNA, really. That just means scientists don't know what it does yet. It's actually linked to all of the energy. That's kind of like the cross strands. And it's interdimensional. It pops in and out. Like junk DNA, what they call junk DNA, that can also change. And it's supposed to do that. It pops in and out of, to the best of my knowledge, I think it exchanges with, I'm not explaining this well, but it exchanges pieces with, or codes. There's like a light code transmission because there's an exchange. They all talk to each other. Anyway, there was that. What else was I going to talk about? My nose started to run. Oh, here we go. Oh, big change of subject. So you know that plants talk and plants are conscious, right? So I'm basically just going to go through all my notepads, and every time I think of something that I wished I included on a live stream, I write it down, but it's in no particular order. So I think I'm just going to go through this, and I've got all of these pads. I know it's supposed to be organized. It would be easier if it was, but I think I'm just going to kind of plow through it. Plants. When you take care of your plants, when you like doctor your plants, or if you're going to prune them, or like pluck dead leaves off or something like that, mention it to the plant before you do it. You just have to acknowledge that they're sentient. It's going to change your energy and make the whole process a lot more cooperative and engender a more benevolent environment altogether. They like it that I said that. They want to be acknowledged as being sentient. So like when I take care of my plants, what I'll say is, pull your energy out of this leaf because I'm about to, you know, if it's a yellow leaf, I'll say something like, I'm about to clip this. Pull your energy out because I'm going to pluck some dead leaves off. If you really want to be wise, you could say, do you mind if I do this? I'm going to tend to you now. Is that okay? It's a really good thing to just ask permission. Pay attention to what you're doing with your energetic stream. For example, pay attention to how much of your energy, without being too neurotic, but in the beginning, being a little neurotic about it, I think it wouldn't hurt, since so many people have been very unconscious about it. Pay attention to the ratio of like where you put your energy in terms of how much of your energy are you putting into control, or having something not grow, something like mowing a lawn or putting mulch down. Neither one of those things are necessarily bad, but if you pay attention to where you're directing your own energy, remember I said that little choices all accrue? They really do. So if you're grooming something, pay attention to the amount of love that you're doing any action with. Like if you're tending your plants in a benevolent way with love and acknowledging their consciousness, it's going to be a totally different thing energetically than if you're trying to control them using hedge trimmers or mowing the lawn or putting mulch down to prevent weeds. If you're doing something, you can tell where you're directing your own energy by, it makes sense, by whether you're doing it with love or whether you're doing it to try to control something. If you're trying to control something, the energy's going down. Just pay attention to the way you do it. Even things, so I was really thinking about this recently. I was thinking about things like fleas and lice, and what do you do when you want to control something, but you want to make sure that you're doing it in a loving way? I always think it comes down to permission and acknowledgement of like the sentience of the other beings. If you're trying to like just really pay attention to your own energy. If you go into eradication mode, that's just telling you something about yourself. That just is telling you like where it's understandable. Like we had to get rid of something like that recently. In our house, we had, I won't tell you what it was because I don't think they would like that. But we had to go out and get, like go to the pharmacy and then get powder and spray and but I did make sure that I spoke to the population of bugs ahead of time, and I said, I need you to leave now. I'm going to give you X amount of time. Same thing I do with flies, where I open the door and I'll say, okay, I'm going to give you 10 minutes to leave. And I'll speak to the fly oversoul and I'll say, this is the space that I need cleaned. I need this. I'm claiming this as mine. So I understand that you're here, and I understand that you are part of consciousness, and I don't want to eradicate you off the planet, but you need to be clear from my environment. You gotta go. It's non-negotiable, and I'm gonna take out this product to kill you in X amount of time. But then you have to honor that. You do. Like in half an hour, we're bringing out this product. And it's going to kill you. So if you want to leave, now's your chance. It really does change it energetically. You know, you have to give a warning. And they appreciate that. And most of them will just die. Most of them will. But when you go to clean up, it goes to permission and connectivity. It'll change your energy too. From negotiation is better than cultivating an adversary. If you see anything as an adversary, then it is one. If you engage in, if you can set a boundary and say, this is what I'm doing. And I'm enlisting your cooperation, and I'm cooperating with you. So in 10 minutes, I'm going to start swatting. But I'm giving you this opportunity to leave. Yeah, so just ask your plants before you do something, and they appreciate it. They really do. Radical change in subject. Did any of you hear Corey Good mention a while back that I forget who it was? I'm not sure if it was the blue avians that he went up with. He was someplace. He travels in space a lot, meets with a lot of aliens. Corey Good. You can watch him on Cosmic Disclosure, and then if you just go on YouTube and look up Corey Good, you'll see him. He was up with some. he meets with a lot of alien species face to face directly, and he's undergone a lot of processes. And one of the processes that he underwent, he was given an opportunity. Remember I said that all my memories came back, and it was really, really traumatic. He was given that option by someone who he was in some kind of a process like age reversal or something, and they said to him, they gave him this choice, and they said, do you want your memories to come back? We're offering this to you. They can very easily take down the veil and all his memories would come back. And they told him, they said, just be aware that if you say yes, it will change your relationship with the people you live with, like your children. And so he had to think about it, but then he said, no, I don't want my memories back. And I remember thinking that was smart because they didn't give me that option. My memories did just come back, and it was very traumatic. And I suddenly remembered clearly who all of the people were. This is why I got a divorce. I had already asked for the divorce, but I also I knew in advance, because I'm psychic, I knew I was getting a divorce, and I knew when the time was. I had already asked my ex-husband for a divorce because I knew that I sensed that the time was approaching. And then I met my twin flame, and even though it's not been a romantic relationship, there's just a catalyst for a twin flame will spark a catalyst, will be a catalyst that will spark the remembering process. And it's all a predestined sequence of events that causes your memories to come back. And then, so one thing that had happened to me is that I suddenly, when I woke up, I was awake already in 3, but waking up in 5 is different, because when my memories came back, I suddenly remembered, I realized that that I was living with the person who had left me. I was living next door to the person who had burned me. I was also living next door to the people who had put me on trial. None of them had changed. Like, that's the thing. Like, first, it would be one, because I'm actually a very forgiving person, and the healing, there had been healing over the 16 years that I lived in Riften. There was healing, so I felt fine. Like, okay, I felt like, well, I'm going to ask for this divorce, and it's like a graduation. To me, it was like a graduation. Like, great, this chapter of healing is done. We can move onward and upward. Fantastic. You know, nice to have met you. I love you. I'll see you. I'll be up the road. But the problem was that it's like the energy all came up from the ground. It was amazing. And everybody's behavior, all of us, everyone, it kind of, there was like a do-over. But all of a sudden, I remembered who everybody was. Like, my father-in-law was the Bishop of Beauvais, the one who burned me and tortured me. And that was such a real thing. Like, I really remembered it. And I remembered who everybody was. And every time, like, my ex-husband would walk in the room, and, like, I would feel it. Like, oh, my God, you know, on one hand, he's Michael, but I could see both of those things, and it was really difficult. It was really difficult to have that relationship. But I also recognized, like, well, I already asked you for a divorce because there's no way I can live with you again now. It's like the marriage part. Once my memories came back, the marriage has to be over. And then I remembered Josh and Carmen and who they were too. That was bizarre. And I remembered Zoya, who's my best friend in the world. I remembered who she was. and I saw all of this stuff that had happened. Oddly enough, my children, thank goodness, I can tell what lines of energy they come from, but their particular relationship, they've both been my children before. And I knew that they're part of the Ascension arc, and I know what energetic strands they're carrying and what their job is. We positioned people very, very carefully in layers that are meant so that the energy will travel certain ways to go down. Like we crossed, there's in the higher dimensions, there's no competition, there's no arguing at all, no matter what you are in the to one another. There was so much understanding in 12, like our higher selves. We positioned people within certain energy streams very, very carefully. And we planned everybody's astrology very carefully. And we crossed to certain things so that we pulled certain energy streams from our souls and crossed them into other people's bodies so that there will always be love for the other side no matter how much you fight. We did that very intentionally. For example, my daughter Cricket and Josh and Carmen's daughter Isabella, they're born a day apart. They're both Virgos, and they're born a day apart. They were classmates in the same kindergarten class, and we actually crossed. We each have, I should say this differently. Michael and I and Josh and Carmen each have 2 daughters. We did things with the energy, with the agreement of the children. We did this on purpose, so that it's as though each one of us loves the children of the other as though they were our own. We did this very intentionally. For example, you know how I said, back to this model, there's a spiritual lineage. There's a spiritual lineage that comes from your past life history. Like all of your past life gives you a certain body of knowledge, a certain experience. We took a child from my spiritual lineage and we sent it down to Carmen. Her daughter Camilla is the daughter of Josh and Carmen, but spiritually speaking, all of this energy is in my lineage. And that is actually, so it's interesting, that explains, it took me a really long time to figure this out, but that explains why I had this, I think I may have mentioned this once before. I had this one experience one time when I was over at their house. I was in the middle of their stairs and she was coming downstairs. And I went to, as she passed, I kind of grabbed her and kissed her on her crown chakra, kissed the top of her head. And there was this minute, plus my energy is so mixed, and sometimes, especially then, I was having these experiences a lot at the time where I was, my astral body was like going into other people's, it was kind of weird. But there was this time when I kissed her on the top of her head, and I swear this is absolutely true. I had probably 30 seconds where I really, legitimately could not remember whose daughter she was. I couldn't remember if she was my daughter or Carmen's. I knew she was Josh's daughter, but I couldn't remember if she belonged to me or Carmen. And I was trying to figure it out. there's such an energetic flip. There was like a rotation going on, and I actually had to figure it out by thinking, wait a minute, her bedroom's up there, so she must live in this house. So that means that if she lives here, then she's probably Carmen's daughter. And I couldn't figure it out for a minute, for real. But here's the interesting thing. My daughter Cricket we did the same thing with Cricket, where physically, biologically, she belongs to me and Michael. But we did something with, but her, like most of her energy actually belongs to Carmen. Carmen's spiritual DNA is in alignment with Cricket's. So it's like, and so the spiritual always has a way bigger influence than the biological one does. That's why you can feel sometimes when you're born into the wrong family, or you feel like you don't fit in with your biological family, like you feel like you have nothing in common with them. It's because you probably don't. Like you're biologically related, but really your energy is all coming from someplace that has nothing to do with them. That actually really happens. And it's so interesting. I've had no contact with Joshua, Carmen, or Camilla for a long time, but I dream of her a lot. And a lot of times in my dreams, even recently, I had this dream where it was a short dream. I won't bore you with it too long, but it was pitch black outside. It was really dark, and it was all hills. It was hills in the country, and I was outside on top of this hill, and I could see this little figure dressed in a white leotard, and she was running and running and running and running and running. She's a little bit older than this now. In my dream, she was younger, but she was running toward me. I could see her, and she was going uphill and downhill, but I could just tell she was running toward. She was trying to get to me, but it was pitch black, and it was like only moonlight. And anyway, that was kind of interesting. She features in my dreams a lot, and it's also, I do have past lives memories where she was my son once. And you know, soul groups we're just soul groups. We're just soul family. And when you remember them, sometimes it's hard to, like, you love them so much and they're like all the way over there. She was my youngest son. I had one lifetime in which I had a lot of kids. I really did. I had a lot of kids. I was a king in that lifetime. And the throne was supposed to go to the eldest, and I broke all tradition, and I wound up giving it to, making sure that it went to my very youngest, who I favored like crazy. This kid could do no wrong whatsoever, and everybody called me out on it, and everyone said you like him best, and they were right. I did. I had a ridiculously soft spot for my youngest child, and I still do. And anyway, you know what it is? It's a particular energetic stream, is what it is, that feels like home to me. And no matter anything that happens in this, there's a particular energetic stream that she happens to be from. Josh carries a lot of it too. And it's almost like, no matter how much of an asshole you are, I don't care. I'm like, and it's funny, this happens a lot with twin flames altogether. It does happen, like, you push each other's buttons, because usually with twin flames, there's an opposition. You're designed, like, that whole paradigm is, you're designed to be the opposite of each other and push the buttons. Like on one hand, you're gonna drive each other crazy, And it's supposed to be that way so that you learn unconditional love, that being the entire point. It's meant to be a test of a spiritual master. Can you remain loving even though they do X, Y, Z, while still not putting up with just like a shit ton of abuse? Because that's not what we're talking about. Abuse is different from just having that person like, I just don't like you. I just don't like, I do everything differently. You're totally my opposite, but there's just something about you. And that's why you're designed to be, oh, what was that thing? I read the best description recently of twin flames. It was almost like, even though you overlap completely and you've got so much in common, there's another level in which you're designed to overlap as little as possible to maximize that which you can contribute toward the other. It's not that there's, it's like you're missing half, because you're both complete. But that's why when you come together for a contribution, with the idea of contributing, you can maximize the potential, because there's very, very little overlap. And yet, on the other hand, I don't really know how that works, to be honest, because like I feel invaded by another spirit a lot. Not possessed, that it's a different thing. That, like, that whole thing what I said, where it, like, I have had that experience of like looking out somebody's eyes, or like being in feeling like I'm in somebody's body, or I think that's a product of the triad. I think that's a product of the energetic construct, but I'm not entirely sure. I haven't had enough people to compare notes with. I would be interested to see if somebody else does that. It's a hell of a thing, though. I also had a different mirroring thing with Carmen. Remember how I said I saw this thing around that energetic field. I saw that around Josh when I first met him. It happened for a couple of months when I first met him. And then I realized, well, I was told that he was my mirror. And I had one too, and I got a big affirmative on that, like that's what it was. But then around his wife, I saw something different when I looked at her, and it looked like a Tylenol capsule, where, you know how it's like cut in half and like one side's dark and one side's light? That's what it looked like. But it was like an oblong egg, like a snake egg or something like that. I want to say reminded me a little bit of like reptilian DNA or mitochondrial DNA or some kind of reptilian egg. It was really interesting though. And it was cut down the middle, and there were the identical features on either side, but one side was dark and one side was light, and there was a crisp line down the middle, and I couldn't figure that out. And that's another thing that I also saw when I first, around this, for the same duration of time too. Every time I looked at him, I would see this thing, and every time I looked at her, I would see the thing that I kept thinking at the time was like a Tylenol capsule, but now I think it's more like DNA. Because it looked like organelles, like the organelles of a cell. There were like little objects on either side that were the same, like the same things were over here as over here. Only this one had some things that this one didn't have at all. Like the light side had less. Anyway. And I think that relates to that dream that I had where I had to clean out the cubby. There was a dark cubby and I still had to clean that out, and I think that's what I've been doing. Anyway, so the point being, when your memories come back, it's very easy to, or I should say, it can be difficult to maintain a relationship, a normal relationship with the people that you suddenly remember all of this past life history with. And there's shared consequences too. Like, remember I was saying, if you heard my last one, when I went I go out of body a lot, but when there was a period of time where my guides were counseling me a lot about group karma, and it seems like an unusual thing to be shown. Like, that was one thing that I found confusing when it first happened to me. I kept thinking that it was inappropriate for me to see everybody else's karma, since wouldn't they want it to be private? Like, isn't that something that should be just between like them and their guides? And I was told that it was on a need-to-know basis, and because I was at the top of this group, I needed to know, because it was like my job to address a lot of it. So from the position of being extremely loving and benevolent, not my business to judge it, it is my business to help untangle, help balance it. That's the word I want. Because it really was an incredibly difficult thing to rebalance, and it was important to understand, to cultivate benevolence, and to cultivate, for me, I think I was shown some of the karma. I think I was shown a lot of the karma from that lifetime, everybody's karma, like the way it was playing out for all parties, so that I didn't feel like it was just me, or like everybody was against me, because it had felt that way. It helped me become more loving, to see how everyone was sharing the burden, because it wasn't, I mean, it was a hideous, hideous lifetime. And I really was, even though, you know, we say there's no victimization, that lifetime was particularly horrible. When you go down into some of these, you know, you take on the role and you say, okay, I'm going to go down and try to help humanity. It's not always a pleasant thing, because they view you as a threat, even if you aren't. You're very often ridiculed, and you have a very, very difficult time. Like, even people like Nikola Tesla, if you look at his life, he had a very, very difficult time. He was quite misunderstood, and there was very little comfort. And it's easy, I think, in an effort to help me deal with some of my own trauma, I was shown how it had affected everybody, including the people who had tortured me, you know, questioned me at trial, the way they were still beginning to deal with it. Like, they haven't gotten over it either. Like, a lot of the people who had been the ones to like put me on trial, or make me undergo these constant tests where they tested me and tested me and tested me. Now they have a very difficult time with tests. They're afraid of tests. One of the reasons that happened is because they're going through what they put me through. And I'm not saying like, ha, you know, what happened to you. I would never do that. It's just one of those things, like, did it make you more compassionate? I saw how it affected everyone, just everyone, because groups incarnate. It's not like we just incarnate as individuals. Entire groups come down together. So if there was a big event that kind of intertwined everybody, and it was really complicated, the entire group comes back down, and it's all interwoven, and you try to deal with these things again. And so just recently, I just began, so like my memories came back in 2013, and just recently I've started to talk about it in public. I was very, very tentative. I didn't want to do it. I was afraid that it was going to cause some kind of ramification going forward. Even though my guides kept saying, you need to do this for this reason, I've been really carrying a lot of fear. I didn't want anybody else to be mad at me, the same people. And just recently, after I kept having, again, for how many years do I have to have that damn backpack dream where I can't put down, there's no place to put down that backpack full of charred communion wafers, and I just want to get rid of it, but I can't get rid of it. And I take it off and I open it and it's like, oh, I've still got more in here, and I have to put it back on because there's no place to put it down. My guides basically finally said, you have to tell it. You have to just tell your story, and everybody's going to have the reaction that they have. And it's not up to me to manage everybody's reaction. My job is to deliver the information in such a way that it's not accusational, but it is true, and maybe steer people's perception, not by lying and say this didn't happen, like say something's better than it is, but maybe just couch it in such a way that highlights the fact that we're all still in it together, and we're not going to get out until everybody gets out. It was a horrendous, horrendous story that affected an entire country. And now it's here. It's on this continent now. And a lot of us aren't still out. A lot of people in the story who were major players still haven't you don't want to force an awakening. You don't want to force growth because you can't force growth anyway. But it's very interesting. I just realized that I have to tell it. And I have to tell it in such a way that it doesn't vilify other people, but it does take some of the thing off of me, because I said it before, I say it all the time. Joan of Arc was the horn of the rhinoceros. But the entire thing is not the sum of the beast. There's tons of people in this thing. And I got all of the attention, and most of the weight was on me. But that's unfair. And since none of the other people are taking it off of me, I have to dump it myself and at least make an attempt to free myself. And do it in the most benevolent way possible without pointing fingers and calling everyone bad. There are just different stages of learning. So my challenge at this time is just to speak about it and let everyone manage their own reactions. There's even things like the fire. Just the fact, it wasn't just me that got burned at the stake. Because there was so much energy around that, and there were so many of the people had a hand in it with deliberation. A lot of people and institutions are still dealing with the ramifications of that as an energy. I feel like I'm not explaining that very well, but it's not like punishment, but it is kind of like there were a lot of factors that went into that. And I'll just tell you that everyone who had a hand in it is going to, I don't mean this to be in a threatening way at all, but there's a karmic consequence that comes back to every one of those places. For example, and I'm not saying I wish it on them. That's not at all what I'm saying. Zoya's house burned down in, I can't remember, it was a couple of years ago. Zoya's house caught on fire. She has a rental property, and 2 kittens knocked over a heater. Nobody was injured, and it wasn't her personal house. But it was the house of that she was in charge of, like the caretaker for this other house, not her own personal one. And the fact that it was 2 kittens who started the fire. No one was injured, including the kittens. They did get the kittens out. But it's very interesting that they had that mess to deal with. Also, my friend Zoya was Yolanda of Aragon. In this lifetime, Yolanda of Aragon married Talbot, the English general. So in the Joan of Arc story, there was the 100 Years' War was between the English and the French. And there was an English general, General Talbot. You can look him up on Wikipedia. Anyway, in this lifetime, he and I went to school together in the New York Academy of Art, which itself burned down in, I think it was the year I left it. It burned down like almost to the ground. And Zoya modeled there. Lahire, the famous mercenary Lahire who fought alongside Joan of Arc, he is, I think he's the painting director now. He's a painting instructor. Painting drawing instructor at the New York Academy of Art. And he was Lahire. Sarah Walker was also my former business partner, and she was a student there as well. Studied with Chris, and we were all in the same class together. And she introduced them to get married. And Sarah herself caught on fire. She had a terrible, terrible burn. She was raking leaves into a pile, and she actually caught on fire. If you just follow the incidents of fire within the population, the Joan of Arc associates, almost every single one of them has had some major fire-esque trauma. I think Zoya's the one who got off easier. She wasn't actually physically burned, but the whole New York Academy of Art burned down. At any rate, what was I going to say about that? I feel like I missed something else. There was something else about that. Oh, yes, I was going to say, this is a hard thing to say, but I do feel like the need, like I need to drop it. When my memories first came back, like the first 6 months after they came back was really difficult. I was having a lot of nightmares. I was having a ton of visions. I was constantly hearing voices. All this stuff came back. And but the entire process, it's not designed to upset you. It's not designed to the whole idea of having spirit guides there, your spirit guide's job is not to keep you comfortable and keep you in your comfort zone. Your spirit guide's job, excuse me, is to help you and assist you to get you where you're supposed to be and keep you on your soul's mission, because we all incarnate here with something we're going to do. Some healing or some something we're here to do. So before I could get on my kind of step out and really embark on my soul's mission, I had to heal from this. You can't go into the fifth dimension while you're carrying so much pent-up trauma. You can't go into the fifth dimension while you're carrying fear and take fear someplace where fear doesn't exist. You're going to have to you're going to have to clear yourself of all of this stuff. So I had to I had to look at it to get rid of it. Sometimes your spirit guide's job is to get you to do the very thing that you don't want to do and you're very good at avoiding. And maybe sometimes your spirit guide's job is to say, is to puncture the abscess so it can drain. And that's what had to happen in my case. I didn't even know that was there. I was happy and friends with everybody. I didn't even know this horrible thing existed. And then my memories came back and I'm like, oh my God. It was very emotional and very chaotic and really disruptive. So in healing from that, it has been increment by increment, and I'm very careful, because I always am. I'm still the same person. I listen to guides very carefully, and whatever they say, do this, I do it. Sometimes I don't. I was the one who told the story last time about how I jumped out of the tower even though my guides told me not to. They said, don't do it. And I did it anyway. But remind me in a second. I want to finish telling you this one thing. But then I want to tell you why we can't. Hang on a second. Yeah, I want to tell you about that. At any rate, I do want to tell you this one story. I think this will, I feel like this will affect someone. In the process of recovering and dealing with the trauma, I was very careful to listen and follow my guide's advice. And remember when I said sometimes your guides will tell you to do something that doesn't make sense? Like logically, you'll think, well, I don't want to do that. That's stupid. Why would I do that? That seems like the thing that I shouldn't do. I have learned in my own experience, sometimes if you can be discerning, like, are there false guides? Yeah, you can be tricked by a guide. But if you really get to know your own guides and you're scrupulous, you're really careful about trusting and just really keeping a beeline and like listening to the highest level guides, because low level guides will come and try and talk to you a lot. And I'll talk about low level guides. In fact, I'm going to write that down. Talk about low level guides. Because there's tons and tons and tons of strata, and there are guides at each one. It's like sedimentary rock. And you really don't want to take advice from low levels. Well, it depends. Sometimes you do. Like sometimes low level guides would be like animal guides, like animal totems. I listen to animal totems all the time. I won't necessarily take spiritual advice, but when they show up, I really pay attention. I've got a very clear connection, very good connection, and I trust my animal guides. But if like humanoid guides are down at those levels, I wouldn't go anywhere near it. Departed loved ones, I don't listen to those either. I don't listen to most of the middle strata at all, but I'm very careful to, for example, I'll say, I call on my highest level personal guides. I call on my highest self. I call on, my highest level specialty guides. My highest level personal guides is probably what I say most often, because they're here to watch out for me, and their specific task is to keep me on my soul's path. So if I keep a really clear, very practiced connection, if I practice that connection and keep that really clear, I know what that voice sounds like. I recognize that. So when they tell me to do something, I pay attention. Even if it sounds, even if I question, I do question it. I do question. I would never say don't question your guides. I would say question your guides all the time and be very discerning. But then if you still are getting a nudge, like I'll tell you that story later, like my guides when they told me to buy a horse, a particular horse, and I'm like, that is the worst advice ever. I can't afford one. That's like all kinds of problematic. That's terrible advice. That's especially at this juncture. I just got divorced. I don't even have a place to live. That's like the worst use of my money. And it's also a really bad horse for me to buy. I can't imagine why that would be a good idea. And they kept telling me to do it over and over. And finally, because it was my guides, I said, yes, fine, I'll do it. And I did buy that horse. And there was a quick turnaround where I didn't even keep that horse. I think I only rode him twice. But it turns out that I had, and it was true, I had a very similar horse when I was in high school, that I was carrying very long-standing, very deep guilt over. I had sold this horse. I had been given the option to sell a horse to a perfect home, best home in the world. And at the time, I myself was homeless, and often beaten. I had a horrendous home life. I was eating out of garbage cans, and selling this horse was it meant me getting to college. And I had to sell my horse to get to college. And the perfect home had offered to buy him for $800, but I had asked for $1,000 because that's what I needed to get to school. And I wanted him to go there so much, but my horse trainer, who was not a good horse trainer and routinely beat him a lot, like left welts on his body, and I had tried to stand up for, basically he didn't have the horse's interest in mind, nor mine. But he had said, I was probably 16, maybe 17 at the time, and he had said, don't worry about it. I have this other buyer. He'll take this horse off your hands, and he'll pay you the full $1,000, and it'll be fine. And I really wanted him to go to the good home, and but I allowed myself to prioritize money over my horse's well-being. And I took the $1,000, and then it was really only like a couple of weeks later, I found out that the person that I had sold him to had sent him to auction, where he probably went for meat. And I never got over it. I carried that regret so deeply. I thought about it all the time, and I just never forgave myself, that being the entire point. Then I'll get back to the story I was about to tell you. But when my guides told me to get this horse, buy this horse, he really did. It wasn't the same color, but he really did remind me very, very much of the horse that I'd sold. And so I bought him. And then there was a whole big kerfuffle where my husband took me to court, and I wound up not being able to keep my horse, but I had purchased a $200 winter blanket, and it wound up with this new horse. He wound up going, in the time that I had him, there was just this thing with turnaround where the man who owned the barn said to me, in lieu of your back board, I already sold your horse to my daughter. She's wanted him for a really, really long time. But anyway, it was a matter of getting him to the right person. She was a good horse owner. She really wanted him. And what he went with of mine, he said, is it okay if he keeps his blanket? She didn't get him a blanket yet. And I said, yes, he can just keep his blanket. So there was a $200 difference both times. And this time I just held him for a certain amount of time, the second horse, to get him to the appropriate person who really wanted him. And there was a $200 blanket that went with him, like as a gift of love. And it balanced the karma. And it wasn't until it happened, my guides knew that he wasn't the right horse for me, but that wasn't the point. The point was, how do we clear this guilt from her that she's been carrying around? We need to have her take an action where you take this horse that reminds her of the first horse, get him to the right person with a $200 bonus that goes with him. You know what I mean? It just had to balance out, and it was a balancing of karma that went with love, and it really did even out. And even though I still regret it, my past action, it balanced out, and so energetically, I'm not carrying that weight anymore. So sometimes when your guides, I've just learned that when my guides tell me to do something, even if it's something I don't want to do, I pay attention. And so that takes me to this story that I did want to tell you. My guides had so I also was counseled by Steve Rother, who I've mentioned before. He's a spiritual counselor. He works, channels the group, and he runs Lightworker, the site. Famous channel, really, really good. And I worked with it, but now he's like $600 an hour, like $500 an hour. He's really expensive. So I haven't had an appointment with him in a long time, but he has never steered me wrong. And so he told me to do the same things that my guide told me to do. Because every once in a while I hear something and I'll be like, really? Really? Do I have to do this? And then Steve Rother gave me basically the same advice. He counseled me through it. And so now it's fine. But one of the things they told me to do at this particular juncture, not here, this was in 2014 maybe, when the Joan memories were fresh. So now I've healed from a lot of them. But there was a time when they first came back when a lot of the trauma and a lot of the anguish was fresh. It hadn't settled down. It was still very raw. And I was still really feeling a lot of it. So one of the things that they had given me, they had counseled me as to what to do about certain key people. Like, you have to go talk to this person, you have to go talk to this person, this is what you do over here. And so person by person, because that's why they showed me this entire group. And it's like getting out of a knot. Like, you're going to have to take this string, and this string has to go this direction. And that's what it's been like. So my ex-father-in-law was the Bishop of Beauvais who had burned me, who had imprisoned me and tortured me and burned me, and I was scared of him, really, really scared. He's very smart. And at the time, every time I saw him, I was just really scared. Like, here he comes. What's he going to do? Is he going to, I was afraid that he was going to do something behind my back to, like, I don't know what. That was the fear, though. And it took me a couple of months between when I got this advice. My guide said, you have to go talk to him. And I was like, no. And I didn't do it. And I heard this for probably 3 months. And then I talked to Steve Rother, and he said the same thing. He said, you have to go talk to him. And he said, it's probably going to be one of the harder conversations you're going to have, but that's what you have to do if you want to heal from it. You can't just clutch on and be scared and hold on to fear and walk around with it. That's not going to help you at all. You have to walk through the fear. That's also, it wasn't like, so notice this, it wasn't like I had to go and convince him or remind him who he was. It had nothing to do with that at all. It wasn't about anybody else but me. Sometimes you want it to be, right? Like, you want everyone to say, oh, Stephanie Weir, you're right. You're right. But it's really not about that, even though I am right. It's really, it's not about getting anybody else to agree or acknowledge or anything. It's just about the healing process altogether. And being able to, so for me, it was about integration, because my first reaction with the identity, the memories came back, and I'm like, no, 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 I don't want that. No savior figure, no spiritual teacher, no, I'm not it. And then after it really sunk in that it was true, I was like, okay, so that was me, but it's in the past. I'm never going to talk about it again. Never, never, never. And that was equally hostile, and it bore no resemblance to integration. So I couldn't have that either. I tried that tactic for a really long time, because what I started to do was like, no, power of positive thinking, focus on what you love, and I'm never going to go back there again, so I'm just going to focus on the positive and manifest it. And I went really, really hard into striving forward. But that still doesn't work, because you still have to clean up the crap. There's like a great big oil spill behind you, and it's poisoning everything. And even though I never wanted to look at it again, I had to like integrate it. So basically I can, once I'm not in, the problem with integrating something that you hate is that it keeps you in a state of internal conflict. I had to find a way to make peace with the fact that this was a portion of my existence, and it put me into like this state of like internal ricochet where I just was like really, really unbalanced for a long time, because it was an incredible amount of energy. Also, the energetic construct too. So it's got other people in it, and they're in conflict also. There's this whole bunch of like love-hate allegiances, and everybody's moving in there, and everyone's trying to deal with their stuff, and everyone affects everyone else. And if you're empathic and in a group, you feel everyone else's stuff. And what we need is one great big group meditation, but that's not happening yet. But so what they said was in 2013, in this process, it was kind of like bite by bite. You have to take another bite and deal with that part and digest it. So there was this portion where they said, you have to go deal with your father-in-law. You have to have a conversation. And I was like, what am I going to talk to? What am I going to talk to him about? And they said very specifically, so this was helpful. Specifically, they said, you have to do 3 things. So you know the 3 is a number, is a catalyst for change, right? Where's my thing? I lost it. They said I had to, where is it? Oh, it's in one of these damn things. The first thing they said was, you have to go ask him for something. Because what it was the memories of the memories of that lifetime were so fresh. It's hard to describe it. It's like the experience had happened all over it again, or it wasn't like a memory that happened a long time ago. That wasn't how it felt. It felt like a reality that's right there in front of you, like this had just happened. Because we're the same people. We are the same people, all of us. And so there was the energy that came up for me at that time. I've healed since then, but at that time that was left over from the Joan lifetime was oh my God, I'm not wearing my glasses, an indescribable amount of this energy of like, never. It was like this war energy. It was just war energy where like, it's like me against everyone else. I've got the Catholic Church, and I've got the English, these major institutions, and it was really like, there was a tremendous amount of resistance. So they said, you have to ask him for something. And I didn't want to ask him for anything because I know he is, and I know he's not going to give me anything. And I just want to get everything for myself. And the energy that came up for me, it was weird because on one hand, I've been living next door to him for 16 years and I know him as my father-in-law on one hand. And on the other hand, when this other energy came up, it's like, I know he's not going to give me the time of day and I'm not going to ask him and I just don't want to. It was just this very stoic, I will not accept anything from anyone, you know. So, but they said, this is what you have to do. So here's the thing. What it's not about getting anything from the other party. You can never change anything about another person or about any external source. You don't have that ability. The only thing you could ever do is change yourself. So what my guides were trying to do was not get him to actually give me anything. That wasn't it. It was just to soften me. Their job is only to work with me. Although a lot of times guides will work with another person's guides. That happens a lot. How do we get these two to, stop fighting or whatever? So they asked me, they said, you have to do 3 things. You have to ask him for something. You have to tell him a lie. and you have to find genuine love for him. Fortunately, I'm pleased to say that part was very easy. I didn't have any problem with that whatsoever. I still don't. But now you might say, why would, if they were real guides, why would your guide tell you to lie? And it's because in the Joan lifetime, and also because the indigo child business, the first indigo children have a terrible time with anything that it doesn't withstand, that doesn't have integrity. They dislike lies or dishonesty of any kind. There are all sorts of stratas of society where it's considered polite to lie. You look nice today. You don't look fat in those jeans. You look lovely. Indigos don't like that kind of. We would rather have somebody say to us, "This is what I really think," and I'll respect that. It's true. I will respect the truth, or whatever you think the truth is. Just be honest and tell me what you really think, but do not lie to me. I don't like it. I had so much. So basically, it was the issue for me was my guides were trying. The question you have to ask is, what are they trying to get me to do? They're trying to get me to change in some way, just the same way they were trying to get me to get rid of the guilt by getting this horse. I had to go into a place that made no sense, and but I had to deal with the root cause. When they tell me to tell a lie, what they were trying to get me to do was be a lot more forgiving to a lie. Bend a little. Don't be such a hard ass. Is this something that you can find forgivable, Stephanie? At that time, I was still carrying a lot of that energy from the Joan lifetime where it's like, this is unforgivable. 600 years later, I still can't get over it. And granted, so here's the thing. There were two things I couldn't forgive at that time. I couldn't forgive the fact that on the document in the Joan of Arc lifetime, they had told me that I could go if I signed it. And they lied. They never had any intention of letting me go. But then the other thing that I couldn't forgive myself for lying is the thing. Because I had signed, yes, my voices aren't real, even though they were. And I had put this, I've said this before, but when I signed it, I put this tiny little mark that was like a secret sign between me and God. I don't really mean this. I'm not really serious. But because I signed it, since I lied with my signature, I basically did. It was a lack of integrity. They were going to torture me anyway. They were going to torture me one way or another. But they went back on their word. They didn't let me go. And then I flipped back and I recanted and I said, well, my voices are real. I signed it, but I didn't mean it. But there was a whole energetic stream in there over promising something and it not being delivered. I was supposed to get this and you didn't uphold your word. And that happened in the beginning of that whole Joan of Arc saga too. One of the things I did at the very beginning, before we even went into battle, before we freed Orleans or anyone, I had made the prince, the Dauphin, sign a document where he said he would take directions from me. Because when we came down and we said, well, we're going to try plan B. We're going to put him on the throne, but he'll have somebody there to help guide him so he can be a good king and not, a total prick or be really immature. There was a pronounced lack of spiritual maturity, but we figured, okay, I'll be there for that. So we're going to have a young person on the throne and a young person in command of the army. But there is spiritual maturity for me, so that I had asked the Dauphin to sign, and he did. He signed a document that said he would take my advice. And then as soon as he was king, he was like, fuck it, I'm the king, I'm going to do what I want. And he did. But there was so as a consequence, a whole bunch of things happened where, as a consequence, I was holding on to this energy, had been buried, never quite got over the issue of dishonesty is unforgivable. Do not lie to me. I was really pissed. And so when they said, you have to tell a lie to your father-in-law, who was the Bishop of Beauvais, it wasn't about getting a reaction or not from him. It was just about, can I bring myself to do it? Will you bend on this point? Or are you going to be such a piece of rebar that you can't even heal? Who's that? Calico? One second. Who's that? Hi. Oh, hi there, honey. Wait a minute. I'm on a live stream. Can you come back in a little bit? Calico, go outside with her. Well, wait. Is she still there?
5 minutes.
Okay. Is she still there? Hang on a minute. I'm going to go find out. Okay. Whoops. Okay, she's gone. I'll catch up with her later. Anyway, the point was, so the other thing they asked me to do was, no, I think I said that, was find genuine love. And that was no problem at all whatsoever. But so I had asked him if he would help me buy the school up the road, and he said no. That's fine. And then I said that that our backer had died. But it's so funny. I said that. I said that because I was crying. The reason I was crying was because I was like, and I could not stand it. I couldn't stand it. I showed up at his door and I was crying. I was just like a state. I was in a state of tears. And so I had to have some excuse. Like, why are you crying and all upset? And I said it was because someone died, but they didn't die. It was just because they told me to lie, and like, I don't, like, genuinely. It's not something I do easily. It doesn't sit right with me. But at least I did it. I found enough leeway, and then the advice was, can you forgive all parties? And the interesting thing is, like, I could forgive him. He doesn't even remember he burned me, and whatever. His karma is his karma, and I like other things that he does. I respect a lot of him. And then, can you find genuine love? And that part was very easy, and it still is. I have no problem with that at all. But what was the other thing? Oh, the one reason. So I was going to talk. Hey, would you get away from the cake? One reason why, speaking on the subject of hearing guides, I know this live stream is a little bit all over the place, but where's my diagram? My other one. Yeah, I do have a lot to say. I might just keep going. I just had that thing. I said, remind me, I'm going to tell you about Oh, come on. One reason why sometimes it's hard to hear guides, for example, damn it, I lost my place. There was a point in the Joan of Arc lifetime where when they had me imprisoned in the tower in solitude, there was a point where I could no longer hear my voices for a time. And that was very, very upsetting. Oh, that leads me to why hast thou forsaken me? You know, it says, Jesus says that in the Bible too. So one of the reasons why it feels when we go, hang on a minute, what is that? Oh, you're over there? When we go down into density, when we go down into individuation, we go into individuation and separation. The experience of separation, true separation, doesn't really happen. But the lower your vibration goes, the less light can get in. So you have the experience of being separate because it feels as though you're no longer connected because no light can get in. You just get more and more compressed. And the lower your vibration gets, the more separate you feel. And nothing will lower your vibration like torture. But it's interesting because there are. That's so interesting. I just thought of a way you could argue out of that. Because there are times when pain or something gets so severe that it will lift you. Like you can't like hit rock bottom or something. Or you've heard of those people who, well, one person. I'm not even going to mention that. Never mind. Not even going to mention that. You know how sometimes like pain can get so severe that there's euphoria instead? I don't recommend it. But I had this experience when I was in the tower where I was alone and in pain for so long that my vibration went lower and lower and lower, and my voices actually went away. And it felt like I was totally alone. I couldn't hear them. Yeah. So that's why that happened. So when Jesus says, "Why hast thou forsaken me?" I think it's because his vibration got so low, and probably being nailed to a cross has something to do with that. Although I think he said that beforehand. I'm not sure. I'll have to look it up. Where's just a second. Oh, there goes my notes. I think I wrote that already. Glad to see you all today. Let's see. So, you know, in the third dimension, there's an emphasis on boundaries and individuation. When we're going up into 5, that emphasis is gone. And there's an emphasis on groups. So when we're all fully in 5, everything is shared. Like, for one thing, there's not going to be any more copyrights. There's not going to be any more copyrights, but there's also no more stealing. So if you create something, like if you paint a painting or something, or you write something, everything is readily shared. If you want credit, you can have it. There's also no stealing. So it's going to be, but there's shared everything. There's just shared resources all together. There's shared music. There's shared everything. The sharing only goes up as we go up in dimension. So what was I going to say about? I was going to say something about finances. Whatever you have more of, that's what you share. If you have more knowledge, you give knowledge. If you have money, you give money. Whatever you have more of, that's the thing that that's expected. That's the thing that you are supposed to offer. Let's see. So dreams become shared. As we go up, we connect in dream time. We connect with our soul group. And dreams are often shared. That's pretty cool. I was going to talk a little bit more about karma. I'm not going to talk about blood magic at this time. Oh, I was going to talk about, that's what it was. Low-level guides. Oh, and then I was going to tell you, that's a good story. Low-level guides. There are low-level guides. Guides who are in like the 4th dimension. So interesting. There's strata altogether. Even in the 3rd dimension, there's strata. So different psychics, I think I may have mentioned this once before, different psychics or different people will tend to connect with different strata. Here's my thing. Again, I'll just use this. A police psychic, or someone who gets very specific, detailed information, like house numbers or names, like where a body is buried specifically, a street address, something like that. They tend to pull information from like down here. So, and someone like a medium who connects with newly departed souls, or just dead people altogether, tends to pull from like 4th dimension, which would be around here. Somebody I would term like a street side gypsy, maybe someone who has psychic ability but they lack integrity, they might pull from like down here. It's important to take spiritual advice from someone, just the same way when I said I will only call upon my highest level personal guides. What you want to do is go for the guides who are like up here. Like up here is like the God Squad and like the Ascended Masters and the just lost my train of thought. Oh, come on. They help they help everyone work together. Why can't I think of their name? They're like up here. Mahatmas, thank you. The Mahatmas are kind of on 10. They're not the only ones on 10, but I think they're on 10. And there are a lot of guides that go in many different levels. But it's important to call on your highest level personal guides. Animal totems, in my experience, somebody else might disagree with me, but in my experience, animal totems are like right around here. It's like 4th dimensional I'm not saying they can't go someplace else. But I've experienced animal totems like down here too. And they come to us in a lot of different ways. I had, there was a period of time when I was first in this apartment, like the first 3 years I was in this apartment was mobbed, man. It was mobbed with spirits. I didn't know how to turn it off, and I couldn't differentiate between all the different strata at that time. Like, I had to go have help to do that. I was working with Kate Lloyd for about 1.5 years every month, more often than that. And I worked with the mamos. I was working by myself, like, so intensely every day, hours and hours and hours of clearing a day. But I didn't know how to separate strata at all. And the person who finally helped me do that, the Twin Flame Healers, do you know them? Jill and Rennie? They're another pair that they're really super educated, but boy, were they effective. It's like maybe $400 to get a session with them. But I've only gone to them, I think I went to them 3 times. And Jill in particular, she's the one where I said, I was really upset. It was Joan of Arc, and I showed up and I was all frazzled. And he started to say, same thing I would say if I was with a client. You know, don't worry, there are plenty of reasons why you could think that you were Joan of Arc. And she said, Rennie, no, look at this. It's so interesting because they are true twins too, and they share telepathic sight too. Like, he can see what she can see. If you get into a partnership with another person who can do this, like I can do this with Kate Lloyd too. She calls herself a seer's seer. And when I'm on the table or when I'm working with her, I can picture something and she has it. And when she says she has something, I'm like, I can pick it up. So it's very useful if you can actually find somebody that you can really connect with on a level with whatever sense you happen to use or sense is. A lot of us have more than one going on. I mean, like, I'm really clairaudient, extra clairaudient, but I'm also clairvoyant, and I've got all my visual senses. They all function just fine. And clairsentient, and that's why when I was in the psych ward, I was like picking up all this stuff, and that all came in physically. That could be uncomfortable. It teaches you, when you learn about this stuff, it really teaches you about yourself. You start to learn how you experience things. I've also had, what is it? Is it clairalience? I think it's clairalience. When you can smell something. I had this weird experience when my stepfather first died. He was a chain smoker, and we didn't get along, and I just didn't like him. And I could feel love for him, but on a personal level, we really didn't. But one time my kids and I were in my minivan right shortly after he died, and we parked outside the grocery store, and I can't remember if it was Cricket or Calico. Someone, right as we were getting out of the car, she said something about my stepfather, and do you ever wonder if he comes to visit? Something like, do you ever wonder, because they know I'm psychic, and they're like, do you ever wonder, were you visited by him? And I said, no. I was snarky. I said something like, no, and that's fine with me. And we went into the grocery store. We were there for maybe 10 minutes, real quick trip, came back out, and we opened the door, and the strongest smell of smoke. Oh my God. It was disgusting. With the car just smelled like smoke. And and Cricket was there, and she's the one, I think she's the one who said something like, maybe it was Tom. And I was like, it probably was. It probably was. But I seem to remember one of them were like, I'm scared now. I'm scared. You know, sometimes you're just visited by a ghost or someone who's freshly departed. And usually when they're freshly departed, they will hang out like around here for a while. They'll kind of linger near their family. Doesn't matter if you didn't like them or not. They'll kind of visit in astral form. They tend to just hang out. There's like a little bit of an adjustment period depending on who you are. There's a period of adjustment. And as long as we're on this subject, which I didn't think we were going to talk about, so like my father died about 2 years ago, and I still hadn't seen him up until about 4 months ago. I still had not seen him, which shocked me because I remember as soon as he died, I was like, now I'll probably my relationship's going to be better with him. And I can't wait to see him. Like he died, he was across the country. So when I thought, well, like now I'll see him because I'm psychic. So I was expecting some kind of visitation and it didn't happen. And then I found out, so usually when that happens, it's one of two reasons. If you don't see the person who died and you're expecting to, like sometimes if somebody dies and if a spirit knows that it's going to frighten you, they won't come. Often they just won't do it if they know that you're outside that bandwidth and they know you and they know it's going to freak you out. I have heard, like my friend's mother died when she was 7, and she remembers distinctly being visited by her mother, who came forward to tell her it was okay. Like, it's okay, I'm right here. And she was terrified because she realized she was seeing a ghost. And she said, go away, go away, go away. And so her mother vanished immediately and never came back. And that's one thing that can happen. But usually if you're expecting somebody and you don't see them, usually one of two things has happened. There's sometimes a period of adjustment. Almost always there's a period of adjustment. There's, depending on who the person is that died, like my father didn't have any spiritual beliefs, and also I found this out when he finally came to visit. I found out that, oh my God, did he have a lot of regrets. He had a very difficult time crossing over. It wasn't easy. He wasn't expecting that to have any life after death, and so he had not lived accordingly. And when he passed, he couldn't make the adjustment emotionally. He was having a really, really tough time coming to terms with some of his own behavior, the fact that it existed at all. There was a lot of counseling and he visited a lot of other people to learn the way it worked. But it's usually one of two things. It's either that they can't come back to visit you now yet because they're in a period of adjustment, which can be really difficult depending on who you are. My father had one of the harder adjustments that I've heard of. But sometimes, here's another example. Another man I knew who is a postmaster worked at the post office in Ripton, and his wife had a horrendous death. Horrendous death. And in their house, they were married for an extremely long time, very close, very good marriage. And she died unexpectedly of a lung hemorrhage, and she coughed blood all over everything. And he was actually blamed for it. They thought initially, before they realized that it was a lung hemorrhage, they thought that it was domestic violence. And so they had, the police had come and held him in custody until And so he had like a double whammy. But I talked to him for a while. And he said that he was expecting a visit because he and his wife were on very good terms and he wanted a visit. And he said that he was in bed a lot and he felt her climb in behind him and wrap her arms around him. He said, it's like she was right there. I felt her body on me. I felt her giving me a hug. And I said, yeah, that's definitely, no doubt about it. That's definitely her. But he said, why can't I see her? And the interesting thing that happened with them, I thought this was beautiful. I really did. Sometimes you can't see them out. You can't see them anywhere because they're so close, they're actually behind your eyes. And that's pretty neat. And so I got the feeling that that was the case with this couple, that she was there with him all the time. And he was expecting to see something external, but like seriously, like that whole thing, like you have to look inside you, that is actually where she was. She's actually so close. And I've had that experience now of looking out somebody's eyes. That's weird. No, but that has happened. Let's see, what else was I going to talk about? Oh, hello. I'm not going to take you out right this second. 2 times, last time and the time before, you pooped on the floor because you asked to go out and I didn't take you out in time. And now he wants because it's that time of day. Now I'm going to make you wait just a teeny bit. Try to be a good boy. No. If he poops on the floor, I'll just have to get up and clean. That'll teach me. Just lie down. He's going to ask me from this side now. Here, so I'm going to move that. And you get out of the chair. There we go. What was the other thing I was going to tell you? There was something. Oh, so this is neat. This has been a long live stream. How long are we doing? All right, not that bad. So this is another thing that this is pretty cool. There was a period of time shortly after my memories came back, and I had asked my husband for a divorce, and I had moved out of the house, and I was living in an apartment, and I didn't have my garden, and I didn't have my kids half the time, and I was really, really unhappy. Plus, I was dealing with all of this phenomenon. The phenomenon was like no small thing. All the memories and the light language and the Kundalini, what effects of that, getting kriyas. So when I moved into, not this apartment, it was another one. You know when, I wanted to illustrate something about synchronicity, because this is the way synchronicity works. Because you know, every force evolves a form, and absolutely nothing is random. You think things are random, but nothing's really random. So there was a point where like moving is chaotic, right? So I had moved in a whole bunch of boxes, and some boxes spilled, and I was like trying to find space and invent space for some things, and there was like some artwork was stuck on the wall, and other things weren't even unpacked yet, and there was a point where a whole bunch of stuff spilled, paperwork and photographs, a lot of photographs had spilled, and there was no table space to either sort it, and the box was ripped. And so I had asked whoever was there too, because it wasn't just me, it was like other people. And I'd said, can you just take some thumbtacks just to get them up off the floor? take these things and just like randomly, just like stick them up, tack them up on the wall, just so they're out of the way so I'm not stepping on them, and then I'll find a place for them later. So some photographs were in frames on shelves, and some photographs were stuck on the wall. Some things were on the counter. And a couple of days went by, and there was one day where I was just overwhelmed and defeated and depleted and sad and really overwhelmed with the Joan memories, feeling a lot of victimization energy, like I can't believe I have to do this and I don't know what to do and I've got no money. And like one of those things, like you feel very alone because you know, basically in the apartment, you're alone. And I didn't have anybody to call. And I think I was basically feeling alone, and also noticing that one of those things, like, I don't usually go into victim consciousness, but at that point I was looking at the parallels. I think this was more the point. I was looking at the parallels between my life this time and Joan of Arc, which I was still really rebelling and repelling against. And at that point, I really hadn't integrated it at all. I was still in more like, fuck you, why does this have to be me? Get away from me. It's not me, it's not me, it's not me, it's not me, it's not me. I know it's me, but just shut up. That was what yeah, more like that. I know it's me, but shut up. It's not really me, it has nothing to do with me now. And so my guides had said on this one evening, and it was snowing. It was snowing, and it was like cold, and it was dark outside, and it was one of those things like you really wish you had like a fireplace and another human being. Like I just wish somebody else was here. I'm so alone. And my guide says, so this was the message. My guides said, look around. And my first response was to look around and see an empty apartment, because nobody's here and it's dark outside and I want a fireplace and I want a person. And they said, look around. And so I was like looking around, like, yeah, there's the sink, there's the stairs, there's the table, nobody's sitting there. And they said, look at all the photographs. And this is what it was amazing. Because I started wandering around the apartment just because they said, look around. So it took me a minute before I realized what they were actually showing me. Sometimes it's just a little thing where like you have to see, look for the commonality. I always say this, if you want to find unity, if you want to find a thread, look for the commonality. What's the same? If you want to find a link, if you're feeling alone and isolated, look for a link between, start to find a commonality. They told me to look around and look at the photographs. And so I hadn't even put all these photographs up. This is just one thing where when people are on autopilot and just doing stuff, synchronicity just kind of magically happens. And I hadn't even recognized that this was even going on. They said, look around, and I started to look. I should have brought them out. I noticed a picture by my bedside. It was a picture from my 20s of me with a cockatiel on my shoulder. And then the next picture over was me with a turkey on my shoulder. And then I kept walking around the house, and pictures that I hadn't even touched. They were ones that fell out of the box that somebody else had just tacked on the wall. There was a picture of me at camp when I was 13 with a, it was a pine warbler. I had saved a pine warbler and nursed it back to health. And it had stayed on my shoulder for a long time. And I was just at camp and I was 13. So I had this little bird on my shoulder there. And There were a couple of other ones. Oh, there was me with a macaw when I was 10. There's a big picture of me with a macaw. And I kept looking around the apartment, and it was me with a chicken, my favorite chicken. I was holding my chicken Jasmine. And there was a common theme. We're all over the apartment. It's only pictures of me with birds. So that was an interesting thing, because it wasn't like I'm looking for the commonality. It's that somehow this just managed to be the case where all of these pictures were all pictures of me with birds. And it was something like, I don't know, maybe 12, 15 pictures. And every last one of them, I've got a bird on my shoulder. And I was looking around like I just finally figured that out. And I'm looking around, and my guide said, now I'll cry. And my guide said, you have always been comforted, your whole life, you have always been comforted by wings around your shoulders. And I was really touched. And they said, you're never alone. You think you're alone, but you're not alone. And we're here now. We have wings around you. That was really nice. I'm glad I could still hear them. So what was the other thing? I've got a whole bunch of them. Got that one. Let's see. Not that one. Not that one. Oh, I said that already. When I first met Josh and Carmen, who I've mentioned, when I first met them, one of the many things, I saw phenomenon a lot. And this was pretty cool. For some reason, I remember noticing that I could see 4 people. Everybody else was the same size as they normally are. But for some reason, I kept seeing over and over and over, I kept seeing 4 of us. Josh, Carmen, me, and my grandfather in this lifetime. My grandfather in this lifetime was Bern Hogarth. But we were standing as a group of 4 in a formation that looked like a square, but we were so much taller than other people, and I could not figure that out. And it was like we were around 55 feet high. We were really, really tall. And I remember when I first saw that, and I was finally, like, it felt like I was at home, energetically. Like I finally recognized, it's kind of like if you were the only elephant in a zoo your entire life, and then one day, not only do you get out of your enclosure, but you finally see another elephant for the first time, and you realize that, like, you've been living your entire life in a colony of, like, prairie dogs, and you're like, I knew something wasn't right. Or like you're a walrus I use that analogy a lot, like a walrus in a prairie dog colony. You just, like, nothing wrong with prairie dogs. You love prairie dogs. Love prairie dogs. But I don't quite fit. I something, and then one day you finally see another walrus for the first time. You're like, oh my God, thank God. It's somebody my own, like, somehow like you're my own size. And now I realize that it was the energy. I didn't know that when I first met them. Like, I see them in physical form and they look like humans, but energetically we're doing something different. And my grandfather, he was the other half of Joan of Arc too. He was the masculine half of, he came in for the war. I came in for the divinity and the child. He came in for, his spirit was the one that came in for everything that had to do with competition and male energy. That was all his. It was not something that I do inherently, but that we have different populations. He was a famous cartoonist, famous artist, Vern Hogarth, he had a one-man show at the Louvre. They loved him in France. Loved him. And he drew Tarzan, and he did dynamic anatomy. He founded School of Visual Arts in New York City, which was funded from a lot of government money. And it was most of his students at that school at that time came from, they were war veterans. So his population was really the veterans and mostly men, and it was all about self-expression and claiming the right to express yourself. But it's very interesting. He was, if you follow his life at all, he was blacklisted. He also was another one who had a massive trial and was also treated very, very badly by institutions. Very much a humanitarian. But that was his, and his name was Byrne. But that was his portion of the Joan of Arc identity, was that of the veteran, the masculine warriors. Yeah. And so my portion is the child, the divine child. Yeah, that's my population. I carry the child populace. Anyway, so when I start a school, or what I wanted to do, especially at Anna Divine, I'm not sure if I'm doing that now or not. It's possible that I still am, but that's my group of my population are basically the indigo children, who basically kind of do the same thing. Like, they stand up for individuality. They stand up for what is right. They do not like lies of any kind. Very connected with nature, very connected with sovereignty, and have a very strong connection with spirituality that you can't tamper with that. There was the hope that I was going to start a school for children that did for children what his did for, self-expression very much. Well, he founded SVA. I don't know what I'm going to do now. Remains to be seen. Oh, here's another thing I wanted to say. So I don't know what's going to happen now. Sometimes plans change, and sometimes there are certain soul contracts that are non-negotiable, where you come to accomplish something. A lot of true twin flame missions are like that. But man, that is no picnic. It's not necessarily a romantic relationship, as if any of you were twins, you know this. It's a mission. You have a mission. It can include romance, but then there are also twin-esque partnerships where you're coming together for humanity to do something, to accomplish something. So I'm not entirely sure what I'm doing with my twin. I haven't heard from him in years, but I thought I would share. This is weird. In one of the things I've noticed, particularly with me, I don't know if anybody else does this, I'm sure they must. I've had reoccurring dreams. I'm very informed by my dream life. When I was a baby, I started having certain dreams that I have prophetic dreams, and I've often had lucid dreams, but often I have prophetic dreams and reoccurring dreams. I don't know another person who has had recurring dreams the way I've had recurring dreams. I had one dream that started when I was about 2. I also have an unusually clear memory of being an infant. Like, I spoke at 6 months. My first word was okay. I was really obedient. You wouldn't think so, but I was. But I have memories from when I couldn't even pick up my head. I have really, really clear, extremely early memories. And I used to have a dream that I had probably 3 times a week from the time I was maybe 2 to the time I was 26. It was a really long time to have this recurring dream. And I know when I first moved in with Zoya, we were roommates in college, this is one of the first things I told her. I was like, I keep having this dream. I've had it 3 times a week ever since I was a teeny baby. And it's true. And it's always, and it was meant to inform me because I've got a real distinct life mission. It was one of those things that, like, I think my spirit guides are trying to brand something in my head so that when it happens, in this dream, I'm in water, and I'm swimming, really strong swimmer in my dream. And I'm in kind of dark water, and there's an island or land in the distance. And if it's just me, if I'm swimming alone, I can reach that easily. Yeah, I know. I could reach it really easily. But I'm not alone. I'm carrying 2 of something. And it's always like the 2 thing differed. Sometimes it was 2 dogs, because we raised St. Bernards. I grew up with 15 St. Bernards. I thought I was a saint. I was a saint. Only I didn't know it. I thought I was a puppy too. I was an only child, but we had 15 St. Bernards. At any rate, I was always either carrying 2 of the dogs, swimming with them, and like they can't swim, so I was swimming with them, or it was my younger brother and sister. When at one point I had a younger brother and sister. My mother got remarried, so half brother and half sister. So I would be swimming with both of them. And then when I was babysitting, it would be like, Viva Larry Sky, or Ari and Ava, or some of the children that I was babysitting for. Then I was a preschool teacher, and I was still having it. I'm always carrying 2 of something. And the nightmare part is that here's the message of the dream, is that alone I can totally get to shore. No problem. And I know that I can carry 1 of these things and get us both to shore with effort. And neither one can swim. The nightmare part is that I can't choose. I don't know how to drop one of them. Like, I don't know how to do it. I can't do it. And so in the dream, usually I would wake up before anything happened, but like the whole thing is that you have to choose. You have to choose. And I just couldn't do it. So then in a couple of the dreams, we all drowned because I couldn't make a choice. And it was a terrible, terrible dream. But it has to do, so when I met Josh and Carmen, I remember saying this to Zoya: I'm in a triad. I'm in a triad. I'm in an energetic construct. And like all of that panic, like, oh my God, I don't know what to do. I'm in an energetic construct. I really am in a triangle, and I can't let go of either one of them. I don't know how to do it. I don't know how to undo the construct. And I also felt like, this is my dream. This is what they were preparing me for, this dream my entire life. They were preparing me for this thing that I've got to make a choice. I don't know what to do. I can't do it. And that's dark. It's really bad. So because I don't know how to do that. I still don't know how to do it. I don't know how to just drop something and let it die. So now I'm hoping that it has to do with the third dimension, which I could drop that and let that die. I'm hoping it has to do with that. I don't know. But I have this, I had this other, so I've been having precognitive dreams for a real long time. And so when I have a dream, I pay attention, particularly if I have it more than once. Like there's that dream I told you about, the White Room dream, where before I met my twin, I had this dream where I was in a pure white room and really pleased with myself, and someone speaks to me telepathically from the bathroom in the shadow. So that's interesting because it just occurred to me not too long ago that he was standing in the shadow, but it's in the bathroom, which means that's the part that has to be cleaned. You know, that's where the shower is and the toilet and everything. That's where you flush everything. So that's the part that has to be cleaned. It's that, and also you have to clean that part in order to get out. So I think that's the stuff that I've been clearing. At any rate, I had this dream that there was a really, really long hallway, and off to the, I had this dream before I had children. I had, also this goes to group dreaming too. So I don't even know how many people are even listening to me right now. This has to do with group dreaming, because I did want to talk about group dreaming, because frequently in a group of people that are closely associated, I know this has been happening in the Ascension Arc group. There are certain people I haven't talked to in a long time. I have no idea what they're dreaming of, but the people that I have talked to have been dreaming about other members in the construct having nothing to do with me. I really pay attention. Like if Zoya has a dream and she's dreaming about Josh and Carmen, but she doesn't really have any conversation with them at all. It's because we all function together mentally at night. There's a lot of shared work that goes on. It's easier to work non-linear in a way that's non-linear when we're all asleep. So at night, also Sarah had a dream with Josh and I in it. That happened a couple of times. She also had a dream with Carmen, and she's never even met Carmen in real life. And I'll tell you about that one in a minute because that was pertinent. But anyway, I had this dream a while ago that there was a long hallway, and if this is the long hallway, whoops. This is the long hallway. Down here was a portion that represented my previous life that I won't get into. And then I had to walk up this hallway, and right down here was standing, Josh Cram was standing, he was my twin. He was standing like a cigar store Indian. Wasn't speaking, but that's where he was. I think this relates to meeting him. I think that's what happened. Like, I met him and there was like a catalyzation process. So I had my Kundalini waking, etc. And then we went no contact. So for some of you who have twins, I have no idea, but it's possible that it relates to you, since there is a group that's involved. So in this dream, I'm walking up this hallway, and this is totally empty. There's nothing along this wall. Along this wall, it's it's actually a shut door. So it's like a door frame, and they're number 5 gray, so that's significant too. It's a shut gray door, it's locked. A shut gray door, a shut gray door, a shut gray door. All of these doors are shut, locked. Oh, there they are. Bye, honey. And gray. So there's no way in, and I have to go, and it's very labor intensive, and I have to go all the way up. So these are like all these different challenges. Remember how I said that like nothing's been working, and I had to undo this thing piece by piece by piece by piece. It's really been difficult. So up here, I finally go all the way up, and right now I think I'm like up here. I hope I'm up here. I hope I'm not down here. I don't know where I am in this hallway. Hey, get away from the cake. So up here, there's finally, at the very, very end of the hallway, there's finally a door. When I first had this dream, the first time I had this dream, nobody was down here. Nobody was there and nobody was there. It was just a long hallway of locked doors, and at the end is a doorway that's open, no door at all. It's just a doorway. It's like an open, it's finally an open doorway. And the brightest light in the entire world is flooding out of there. It looks like, you know what? It looks like it looks like my white room, actually. But light is just coming, flooding out, and you could step into like a void of golden light. There's just the brightest light that's there. It's really wonderful. And so I had this dream with the empty hallway a number of times, and then when I finally when I met Josh, I had this dream again a couple of times where he was standing at the beginning of this hallway. And then there's this long, awful hallway. And then he's standing there at the very, very end of the hallway, right next to the open door. So, I don't know what the fuck that means. I'm wondering if maybe I meet him and we go through the open door, or maybe I go through the open door. I have no idea. I haven't seen him in years. I think I was going to say something else about it, though. Let's see. Finish the job. Baby birds in the woods, yes. What else do we have? Oh, some of these I said already. That's good. I should really go through these pads, and there's my shopping list. I think I said that last time. Oh, animals in cages. I think I will say that. One of the things that I forgot to mention about when I went into the psych ward for 10 days, one of the things that I wanted to say about that, and it was such a learning experience too, it left me forever changed, because I will never do certain things again. So every spring, my daughter and I have been doing this her whole life. I've been doing it my whole life too. Where we go out and like catch toads or something like that, and catch toads and catch frogs or something, and you keep them in a terrarium or something for like a day or something, and then you take them back out and you release them. I'm not going to do that anymore. When they told me, they asked me if I would go with them and get checked out by a doctor, but then they led me to believe that I would be coming right back. And then I wasn't able to return home for 10 days, even though they were holding me against my will, and they wouldn't let me have any of the things that I actually needed to get back in my body, because they thought they knew what was wrong with me, but I knew that that's not actually what I needed. And I was happier and comfortable where I was, and I didn't even think that was legal to just decide to take somebody and keep them against their will for 10 days where I wasn't any harm. I wasn't going to harm myself, and I wasn't going to harm anybody else. And the food that they fed me was wrong. There was nothing whatsoever to do in there. It was basically just being held in captivity. And even though they gave us blankets and they gave us, you know, certain toiletries that they thought we deemed acceptable, and I was fed, but it wasn't food of my choosing, and it wasn't food that I deemed acceptable. I don't eat meat. All kinds of things like that. I experienced what it was like to be held in captivity by people who don't actually know what you are. And even if they think they have, and they had all sorts of like institutional rules, like, well, we're only going to let you out on this patio for half an hour every day, and we go by the clock, and we're not going to let you have your own belongings back. And none of that was explained to me before. They basically just took me. And I will never do that to another being. I realized that I haven't always asked permission. Most of the time I ask permission. And things like moving the frogs out of the middle of the road, like I'll move frogs out of the middle of the road. But I'm going to be much more cognizant of that from this point forward. And one of the things, like I know I don't usually, I just have to really think twice about that. Like right now, my snake wants to get out of his enclosure. And I'm just very keenly aware that I have no right to keep, he should be able to go where he wants, except there's already one loose snake in this house, and I can't find him. That happened because when I was in the psych ward, my snake got loose, and I didn't come home for 2 days, and nobody could catch him, and now he's been gone for like about 6 weeks, and I have no idea where he is. He hasn't eaten. Kenji. We've looked everywhere we can possibly think of. We've moved everything. We've moved all the appliances, and we haven't found him. And we do have this other snake, but like I'm really not sure what to do. Like I used to leave Kenji on the table loose because I don't like captivity. And now I'm really not sure what to do. Like right now I'm looking at my snake, and he really wants to get out. So I'll probably take him out. But I don't know. I just thought I would mention that. Anything else on here? Oh. So I do have more things to say about psychic children. You can play around with telepathy, and there are lots of different games you can play. You can try, like one of our favorite games to play, I studied with Adam Bernstein for years. Whoops. And you can write down, you can play the game Billets if you get a group of people. You can play the game Billets where everyone gets a little piece of paper, and you can write down something like a question that you want answered, or lots of different ways to play it. You can write down a color, you can write down anyway, you can play around with, you fold it up, don't write your name on it. Everyone picks one. You see if you can get any impression off the piece of paper. See if you can feel what color did the person write. Does anything come in? Does anything you feel like, do you think it's a man or a woman who wrote this? But you know, you fold it all up the same way. Do you think a man or a woman wrote it? Do you feel, does it feel like what color do you think they wrote? And like it works best if you have, if you really are okay with not getting it right. Like if you're struggling and you're trying to figure it out mentally, it's not going to work. If you totally soften and play with it and be playful and just like feel around and play with your senses and see, for example, is there a noise associated with it? Like you have to learn what a little bit about your own self as an instrument. Like some people will pick up things through their ears, and some people will have a taste, and some people will be, you know, every once in a while you can smell something if the if the person is anything like my stepfather who left cigarette smoke in my car. He came back to make his presence known. Or you could draw a shape, like is there a shape? Some people will be able to pick up things visually. Or do you feel it in your body? Do you have an answer to this person's question? And sometimes you can answer without, you don't have to know what the question was. You can just, you know, say Delaware. Or something just pops into your head. Does it seem like it's to one side or the left? One side or the other side? Do you feel a temperature associated with it? And gradually you begin to learn about yourself as an instrument. There are some things that that people do really well and other things they don't well. Oh, I started to say this. I think I didn't finish what I was saying about the twin flame healers. Jill was able to look at, because she was the one who, she's like, oh no, Remy, she really is, like she really is, like this is real. And also that like I'm a blueprint designer. And she said, we've only had one other blueprint designer, and you're another one. Is we design templates. And what she said was, my session was kind of an unprecedented session. She said, I've never seen anybody who has as many guides as you. It's like, she said, it's because the light you're carrying is so bright, it's like they're all attracted like bugs. And it was true, but like I was so overwhelmed at the time. I didn't know, remember I was talking about strata? I didn't know how to sort through the strata. It was incredibly overwhelming. And there were like 15 different levels. And remember when I said it was like I was being mobbed. I didn't want to be mobbed. And I don't know what she did. To this day, I don't know what she did, but she was able to do it. She sorted them all into layers. And she said, well, we're just going to make it so you only get the top ones, or you can only, like, and a lot of them wanted things too. And a lot of them were trying to reach Josh. That was interesting. I found that to be really interesting. And I think possibly my light was so bright because it may have been merged with his, but there were a couple of guides who weren't after me, they were after him. She said there was like a Celtic, there was some Celtic woman who really liked him, and she was trying to get to him through me, and she was really pervasive. And Jill was able to like send her away or tell her she had to go do something else, because I was just like overwhelmed. I had no idea how to manage any of them. And a lot of them were animals, and I wanted to keep the animals. Like that's something that I prefer. But a lot of the lower human ones, like I had no idea what to do with them, and I was so overwhelmed. And they affected my energy, like my heart would pound, and it was like being actually mobbed by people, like if you were the Beatles or something, and just you've got thousands of people and they're all trying to get to you, and there's no security. That's what it felt like, and you can feel them all. And she had done something. She put them all in layers. So if any of you are struggling with that, I really do recommend the Twin Flame Healers. You can look them up. I think they're on YouTube, and they're on, I think they're probably on Facebook too. They were very, very helpful. And both of them are highly trained psychotherapists, and they do all kinds of things. They're like one of those people, like they have all kinds of like actual training, not just like twin flame therapists who are twin flames but have no actual training in like science. Anyway, Jill and Remy, what else? I keep wanting to do that, and I haven't. Oh, here's another thing about psychic children. So children are born psychic altogether, born telepathic, and the first place I realized that when I was talking about psychic children, I said that so many times children shut down when they're like in junior high and high school. That's when it like tends to shut off unless there's interest. But I wanted to go back and clarify. It tends to start shutting down. You'll notice this. You'll have like a really open baby, totally psychic child, and the time when it starts to shut down is when right at the same speed that they start to get modest is right where the same thing starts to happen as soon as they begin to develop what will other people think. Other people are looking at me, other people are thinking something. What will other people think? As soon as that energy comes in, I'm not supposed to show myself. The ability to see fairies, the ability that starts to shut down as soon as their playmates, when that starts to go away, their senses start to shut down. Try to cultivate more of it. Develop the imagination. You're going to need it. It's an absolutely needed skill set. You have to promote it. So so many things are different in the fifth dimension. The third dimensional system, the fifth dimensional system, vastly, vastly different. Financial system, totally different. You can keep as much as you can share. Actually, that's pretty much true of psychic development too. You need to remain open. Remain open. Everything is flow based. It's not based in privacy. It's not based in individuation. That's basically the whole point. It's no longer based in individuation and ownership. It's not. You have to let that go. You have to open up and be willing to share absolutely everything. So you're going to share your money. You're going to share your time. You're going to share all your resources. You're going to share your knowledge. You're going to open up your mind and share your thoughts about everything. You have to be willing and able to withstand transparency. So you have to love yourself enough to be comfortable being vulnerable in front of people. That doesn't mean everybody's going to watch you on the toilet. But there's a level, you have to have a level of comfort in flowing. The more you clutch and possess and shield, the lower you go. You'll notice in this, back my trusty diagram. I lost all the other ones, but I still have this one. The only place there's really density is down here. as you go up, it starts to, it's more linear down here too. And as you go up, it gets a lot more circular. Everything gets circular the further up you go. And everything is like group oriented. So you share with whoever is in your immediate vicinity, and as you travel, your immediate vicinity changes. So there's like an exchange that goes on all the time. So the 11 gateway, as we go through the 11 gateway, the exchange needs to be equal giving and receiving. So your masculine and your feminine balance are even. So this is one of the reasons why we had to get the feminine into leadership, because, well, I was going to talk about the blade and the chalice, but really we just have to get through the 11 gateway now. You can't hate the receiving part. Don't be afraid of the emptiness or think that the emptiness is bad. The emptiness isn't bad at all. It's okay for someone to be needy. Needy is the wrong word. For someone to have a vacancy, in order to have flow, you have to be able to put something somewhere. So if, yeah, there's just an emphasis on flow. I guess I've already said it. So the more you give, the more you receive. That's a thing too. In the third dimensional system, it's lack-based. You know this. So that the more you give, the less you have. But that's not true if you're moving into if you're moving into a fifth dimensional system. In a fifth dimensional system, the more you share, the love is amplified. You actually get more the more you give, because it's flow-based. So your pipe is going to widen. The pipe that is you. The more you give, the more vacuum you have, you just bring that in. So light is data. What you're after is light and love. So if you're really compressed and everything is not flowing, you're not going to get anything. The more you flow, the more movement you get, and that's the more expansion you get. What you're really after is expansion. And the more you expand, the more light and love comes in. So you really do wind up receiving more. What else? I feel like I didn't explain billets well, but maybe I'll do it a different day. Yeah. Okay, talk about that. Talked about that. Yeah. Okay. Perhaps I'm done for now. I feel like I forgot something. Oh! I was going to talk about this one. I was going to talk briefly about, and I was going to talk about that too. All right. Addictions. So one of the reasons people get addicted, one of the reasons that addictions are so incredibly hard to get rid of is that people don't know enough about entity attachments. Often, for example, with like marijuana, if you're in a lower dimension, if you're in a lower dimension down here, then if you smoke marijuana, it will open up your crown chakra, and you'll possibly be able to access like the fourth dimension. But in doing that, what lives in the fourth dimension? A lot of low-level entities live in the fourth dimension who are attracted to like frequencies. So if they're one of the reasons that addictions are so incredibly difficult to get rid of, is because addictions are misunderstood, and they tend to try to treat it from a chemical or just a purely physical perspective, but there's way more energetic influence than there is biological. I need a different diagram. That's really not the right one. There's only 2 strands of biological DNA or energy that you've got, but you've got a lot more light energy, and energy, higher level energy influences the physical substantially. So if you've got, say, someone who's addicted to a substance, if that substance opens up their crown chakra, like marijuana does, I know it helps a lot. It's got a tremendous number of medicinal uses. I'm not saying it doesn't, but that's not the only thing it does. It also, and a lot of these other drugs also will do this, they will open up your crown chakra kind of artificially. And if I'm talking about specifically addictions, one reason why it's very often hard to drop an addiction is because you've got entities in the 4th dimension that will latch on. You've got entity attachments, and they put down tendrils, they latch into your energy body, and they start to like nurse or they turn into like a kind of a succubus energy. They don't want you to quit. So they will put additional pressure or additional force behind getting you to keep the supply up. Because you're not just feeding your own physical body, it's also attached entities. That's really true. That happens a lot. Speaking of marijuana, if you use it, if you're a very high vibrational entity and you use it, it won't allow you to go up at all. It will cause your vibration to plummet. I know every time I've got I use it occasionally for fibromyalgia if the pain gets really bad, but almost never. And I've noticed that it does not raise my vibration at all. It makes me come crashing down. And it does occasionally help the pain, but I almost never use it at all for that reason. What did I start to say about that? Anyway, if you're struggling with an addiction, or if you know somebody who does, find an energy healer or a shaman could do it, or someone who is specially trained with access consciousness. They have an ability to, or they have specific techniques specifically for removing entities, entity removal. You'll have to go to an entity removal specialist or a shaman who knows how to do that kind of work competently. And it might have to be done more than a couple of times. But that's really the only way to do it, because if you treat it just with just physically, and then the same goes for alcohol as well. There are a lot of, actually alcohol, that's absolutely true. There are a lot of alcoholic spirits that linger in the 4th dimension, and they just go around looking for a like vibration. There are a lot, in the 4th dimension, there are a lot of very lost, oh, I should say this too, as long as we're on this subject. There are a lot of lost spirits who linger in the 4th dimension, who have no idea where they're supposed to be, and they're not even necessarily bad people, but they just have no idea what the hell's supposed to happen. Like, for example, I started to talk about I'm going to turn the light on. I started to talk about my father before, and fortunately he did get like an escort who was there with him the entire time, but he wasn't expecting anything to be, he didn't think there was going to be an afterlife, and he was totally unprepared and also in a really bad mood. So, but there are different kinds of spirits can attach, And they're not always negative. Sometimes they're actually really lost. Like my sister had, so did I, as a matter of fact. My sister had, I think it was a tulpa for years, a couple of years. And it was before I knew anything about it. She had a man who followed her around in a dark coat and a hat. And he followed her around for several years. And then he finally left. I heard, who was it? Was it Adam? I can't remember if it was Adam Bernstein or not, who told me that there was he's a medium. He's a psychic medium. I studied psychic development with him, but he's also an evidential medium. So he specializes in speaking with dead people, but the thing that makes him an evidential medium is that he's very specific. So he'll come back and he'll give you very specific details so you know that you're talking to this person as opposed to just some stranger. He's very good. He's in Kingston. What did I start to say about that? Oh, but who was, I think it might have been him. I was talking to somebody who said that they were trying to, sometimes souls come in and they're just really, really lost. Like they had no idea. They're looking for anything familiar. Sometimes it's kind of like, sometimes you leave your body. In this man's case, this was a man who had suddenly died, and it was very unexpected. And in his life, he wasn't expecting anything to be, he didn't think there was going to be an afterlife, and he didn't really know. He had died very, very quickly, and it's like he suddenly found himself in a foreign place and had no idea what was going on. So it's as though you suddenly found yourself in a foreign country where you don't know anybody, and you don't even read the language, and the alphabet is different, and you don't have your phone, and you don't even read the signs, and you don't know any, so you just start to look around for anything familiar. So this is why sometimes they go to, spirits will find, they will gravitate toward anything that looks familiar. So like frequency, like attracts like. So in this one man's case, Adam, I think it was Adam, had been called in to talk to a spirit who was lost, and it was a man who had attached himself to this other man only because they drank the same kind of beer. But it was like a frequency that he recognized, and so he like felt his way over there, like this guy seems a little familiar, even though they didn't really know each other. And he kind of attached, you know, like if you're scared and lost someplace, you kind of like would hold on to something. Just like, you know, get me out of here. I have no idea where the fuck I'm going. So he had latched on to this man. So it's not always that they're malevolent. Sometimes they're scared or really confused or, you know, lost or something. Anyway. What else? I talk about a whole bunch of things. Oh, I'm not going to talk about this today. I'm going to talk about this the next time. And this one. All right. I think I'm going to end it here and go have a piece of cake. It was Calico's birthday yesterday. She turned 15. How the hell did that happen? I want a baby. I wanted a baby. I missed my babies. I love you all. If you would like to if you can make a donation, that would be really fantastic. I'm going to put the link on my wall. If you would like to schedule a private session with me, I would like that too. I think that'd be fun too. What else? If you would like to go to the Ascension Arc on YouTube and like and subscribe, I would be absolutely delighted if you would do that, because I'm trying to build up my channel. I think I've got 92 subscribers, but before I can do live streams on there, I need 1,000. I don't know how to get 1,000, but I would like some more. Okay. I love you. Thank you all for coming. Bye.